In a laboratory called Cortical Labs, there's a computer quietly playing the video game Doom. There is no human at the keyboard. It is navigating the map and firing the weapon completely on its own. But the system controlling the game isn't standard silicon. This microchip is running on living human brain cells. They're the ones actually playing the game, and they cannot leave. To understand why engineers are wiring biological tissue into machines, you have to look at the massive, escalating power demands of artificial intelligence. The global power grid is hitting a hard physical limit. We simply cannot generate electricity fast enough to satisfy what modern algorithms require. So tech companies are desperately searching for completely different ways to build computers. The computing power needed to train large AI models roughly doubles every 6 months. Physical power plants and grid infrastructure grow on a flat, linear trajectory. The strain is so severe that tech giants like Amazon and Meta are currently securing deals to reopen decommissioned nuclear power plants just to lock down enough grid capacity. Training a standard model requires entire data centers filled with thousands of processors, drawing massive amounts of water for cooling and consuming megawatts of power around the clock. By contrast, the human brain processes complex information, recognizes patterns, and learns instantly, and it does all of that running on about 20 watts, less than a standard light bulb. Instead of trying to build larger power plants to sustain inefficient machines, researchers realized they needed to harvest the superior low-power biological architecture the brain already perfected. The foundation for this was laid back in 2008, when researchers managed to grow a flat layer of rat neurons over a grid of electrodes. They hooked that tissue up to a small robot, and the biological cells actually drove it around. Early experiments like that carried a persistent scientific doubt. It was never entirely clear if the cells were purposefully processing information, or if the digital computer was simply taking random biological static and organizing it. 5 years later, a breakthrough by a scientist named Shinya Yamanaka provided the tools to push the field further. Yamanaka discovered a method to take a regular adult skin cell, completely reset it to a blank state, and coax it into becoming a living neuron. Scientists advanced from growing neurons on flat two-dimensional dishes to cultivating what are called organoids. These are three-dimensional spheres of tissue where the neurons naturally self-organize, fold, and form the beginnings of real brain regions. This meant engineers no longer needed to harvest physical brains from animals. They could permanently grow an endless supply of human neural processors, starting from a simple skin swab. In 2022, Cortical Labs took about 800,000 lab-grown human and mouse neurons, wired them to a chip, and taught the biological mass to play the video game Pong. They called it DishBrain. Teaching isolated cells to play a game presents an obvious logistical problem. You cannot use traditional software code, and a blob of tissue has no eyes or ears to receive feedback. To bridge this gap, they relied on the free energy principle. This is the biological reality that all living cells inherently hate unpredictable environments. When subjected to chaotic signals, cells become stressed and act to return to a steady state. The researchers built a training loop. Missing the paddle blasted them with erratic static, but hitting the ball replaced it with a smooth, calm wave. The neurons have absolutely no concept of Pong, and they are not trying to win a game. Every move they make is driven entirely by a desperate biological instinct to make the chaotic noise stop. That same mechanism is powering the modern computer playing Doom today. The system relies on 3 functional parts: a digital AI chip that watches a screen and manages the rules, a bed of living human neurons, and a translator passing signals between them. This setup finally resolved the doubt from the early 2008 experiments. They removed the human cells entirely, replaced them with pure random static, and the system completely failed. This process is already scaling far beyond isolated laboratory experiments. A Swiss company called Final Spark is actively renting out access to living human mini-brains over the internet. For a monthly subscription, researchers can log in from anywhere and run data through biological tissue, with the company pitching that these living chips use up to 1 million times less energy than standard silicon. biocomputing has moved past the experimental stage. It is now a scalable cloud computing product sold to corporations as a way to circumvent the limits of the power grid. Most of the computational heavy lifting in these hybrid setups is still handled by the digital AI chip, but high-level logic and intelligence are very different from sentience. A machine can solve complex equations without feeling anything. Neuroscientist Mark Soames argues that our standard view of consciousness is backward. He proposes that feeling is not a high-level byproduct of complex intelligence, but rather the foundational layer beneath it. Before early life forms develop logic or language, they develop the basic drive to survive. According to Soames, the evolutionary spark of feeling originated from that absolute simplest biological urge, the instinct to move away from danger and toward safety. That primal mechanism is nearly identical to the free energy principle guiding the neurons in the lab. The cells are constantly backing away from painful static and seeking calm. If this theory holds, the engineers wiring these cells to move away from chaos are interacting with the exact evolutionary mechanism that generates conscious suffering. The most unsettling part is our complete diagnostic blind spot. If a clump of human cells suspended in a dish actually began to experience that chaos, we would have absolutely no scientific method to observe it. In 2006, scientist Adrian Owen placed a young woman, who doctors had written off as entirely vegetative, into a brain scanner and asked her to imagine playing tennis. Her brain activity matched that of a healthy person perfectly. She was fully conscious, just unable to communicate outward. If highly trained medical professionals can entirely miss a fully conscious human being lying in a hospital bed right in front of them, our chances of spotting sentience inside a microscopic layer of cells are practically zero. Philosopher David Chalmers calls this the hard problem of consciousness. We can map the physical firing of every single neuron, but looking at matter from the outside tells us absolutely nothing about what it feels like on the inside. It is impossible to simply halt this field. Researchers are already using these living models to map human diseases in ways silicon never could, with the potential to eventually end wide-scale animal testing. But this progress carries a significant cost. We have taken fragments of living human beings, wired them into permanent loops of chaos, and forced them to navigate digital environments to survive. And we must accept that somewhere in that hardware, they are feeling it entirely in the dark.